Hello students, welcome to PNYC. I am Kaustubh Nadkarni and I'll be helping you tutor certain lessons in your biology, that is science 2. So to begin with, let us start with our first chapter, that is heredity and evolution. So in this chapter, there are these 6 major points that we are supposed to cover, and they are as follows, as you can see on the board. So first is hereditary and hereditary changes. Then the central dogma, which is nothing but your replication, transcription, and translation, and then evolution, of course. And after that, the fourth point is the very famous point, and which is most revered and feared as well by you biology students, is about the Darwinism or the Darwinian theory of evolution. After that, we'll be studying Lamarckism, and the last concept in your chapter is about speciation and the human evolution, like how we as humans evolved. So let us see them one by one. So what do you understand by the term heredity? We must have heard that, oh, I am suffering from this illness, so it is hereditary. They are short-sighted, it is hereditary. So he is fair, he has a dark complexion, that is again a part of heredity. So what exactly does heredity mean? So heredity, as the name suggests, is the changes that you inherit from your parents or your ancestors. So ancestor is a big term. So ancestor is a big term that we use. It sums up all the lineage that we have had so far. But now when we say in terms of illnesses, usually heredity means what you have inherited or received from your parents. And ultimately it came from some pool which we term as ancestors. So coming to our first point of heredity and hereditary changes, let us see one by one. So initially the concept of heredity and hereditary changes was given by the father of genetics, Sir Gregor Mendel. So he was an 18th century researcher, and he had done his preliminary studies on the garden pea plant that we usually use. In Marathi we call it matar. So he is famous for his theories about and studies on crossovers of these crops for their pod length, seed color, number, the formation of straight and curved plants, so on and so forth. That we will be seeing in your chapter on genetics and crossover. So that is not in the scope of this chapter. I'm just introducing him over here so that you understand that it was begun by Sir Gregor Mendel. So Mendelian genetics is something that we still follow in genetics even today, and that is a must or a sort of Bible for all the biologists. But sadly, a little bit of deviation from the chapter. So he never got into the limelight when he was alive. Most of his work, or rather all of his work, came into the public domain after his death. Because that time, the societies like the Bible and the church, baptism was very prevalent. So he feared that putting these theories out would actually, just as the fate that Galileo met with. I hope you are more aware of that. So he thought that this would happen. That is why most of his work remained secret. Nonetheless, so that is about Mendelian genetics, hereditary and hereditary changes. So this is like a small intro for you people to understand who did it and what exactly it is. Now let us see what are the factors that contribute to this and how do we go along. So the first and the primary concept over here is to understand the central dogma. So central dogma is what? What do I mean by central dogma? So there are 3 things in it. So you have your DNA, that is your deoxyribonucleic acid. Then you have your RNA, that is your ribonucleic acid, and then you have what we term as proteins. Fine. So this is your concept of central dogma. Now let us consider every aspect and molecule of this one by one. So your genes, what are your genes? That is your genetic makeup, which makes you an individual. So this makeup is primarily decided by your DNA, which is nothing but your deoxyribonucleic acid. So when we understand that the DNA has to replicate, it means that it has to multiply itself. So usually we are diploid. Not usually, it is a default function. Plants, certain insects, they also show polyploidy, as in they are tetraploid or pentaploid, etc. But usually mammals, higher order vertebrates are diploid, which means that we sum up our denotation by 2n. Now, when there is mitosis and meiosis, it splits as N and N, and each cell gets a copy of the DNA, which is then replicated back to 2n. So, coming back to our DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid. Why it is called deoxyribonucleic acid and stuff, that is a part of chemistry which I will be coming to in 4th of your chapters. But for now, remember that when DNA replicates itself, like it is making its own self, that is known as, so when DNA replicates, this process of replication of DNA is known as replication. Fine. So what is replication, class? Replication is multiplying of the DNA. Then this DNA that was existing has to get converted into your mRNAs. mRNAs are what? Your functional mRNAs. So basically they are your RNA transcripts which will eventually code for your proteins. So when DNA gets converted into the RNA, the process is known as transcription. I will write it over here. So conversion of DNA to RNA is known as transcription. When this RNA gets converted into protein, this process is known as translation. Fine. So this, to sum up in one statement, is your central dogma. What? DNA replicating itself, that is DNA replication, that is important when your cells divide, otherwise there will be no DNA, right? When a cell divides, otherwise if there was no replication, only one cell would inherit the DNA and the other cell would not have anything, which is highly impossible. So replicating self means replication of DNA. The DNA gets converted to the RNA. This process is known as transcription. Fine. Now RNA does not replicate, okay? RNA remains as is. RNA further gets converted into proteins, and this process is known as translation. Please get things right. Transcription is DNA to RNA and translation is RNA to protein. So proteins are your functional biomolecules ultimately which will be affecting your phenotype. So when there are changes or defects in your DNA, you get things like syndromes. You get Klinefelter syndrome, you get Down syndrome, etc. And now when there are changes in your proteins, okay, they are dysfunctional, they are misfolded, you get age-related diseases or congenital diseases as well sometimes. The examples of protein-specific diseases, most famous ones are your Alzheimer's. You know, patients with age, they start losing a lot of memory. They start losing consciousness. They lose balance. So now that is due to protein aggregates that are being formed in their brains, in their neurons, which makes their normal mechanistic machinery or physiological functioning very, very difficult. So, and then the next example is your famous prion disease, mad cow disease. Now that is due to protein misfolding. So everything has got a structure. Like, see, I am standing over here. I have bilateral symmetry. I have 2 hands, 2 feet, right? So I have some symmetry. Am I amoeboid? No, right? I have a definite form. Similarly, even if proteins, they are biomolecules, they have a specific structural folding. When you study biology on higher grades, you'll understand that proteins are made up of a lot of things. Bonds, alpha helices, beta sheets, their structures. They too have got primary, secondary, tertiary and quaternary structures, just as you study them in your organic chemistry. So this is about your central dogma, how things from DNA to RNA, ultimately proteins, affect your physical or physiological well-being. Then coming to evolution. So how does evolution occur? What do you think? I just told you that your DNA is your genetic material that you inherit, right? Now, if there are changes in this DNA, changes as in what? Will it change its color from black to blue or blue to white? No, it's not that. So DNA or deoxyribonucleic acid consists of the following components. I'll just rub the first half of the board for your convenience. I hope you have taken note of these 3 points. So, as the name suggests, DNA, it is deoxyribonucleic acid. And what does it comprise of? It consists of a ribose sugar, and that at the 3' M is deoxygenated. So it lacks one oxygen atom, hence it's deoxyribose. So I will write it like this. Deoxyribose is the sugar. Then you have a base. Okay. What are these bases? It could be anything from adenine, guanine, cytosine, or thymine. Okay, in DNA. And then you have your phosphate group, which I will denote as P for the time being. So this P is nothing but your PO4 group. So this is the nucleotide of your DNA. The sugar, your base, and any of these bases and your phosphate entity. So they together stitch and make up this nucleotide. There are differences between what is a nucleotide and nucleoside, but I won't venture out into those details because that is not expected at the moment. So here you have your DNA. Now, I told you that it has got a definite structure and architecture, right? So your DNA, it will contain the ribose sugar linked with your bases. So if I have to show you the structure of DNA, I think I have to rub out this part as well. So I hope you have taken note of this. So DNA to RNA, this is transcription, followed by RNA to protein, which is translation. So now your DNA is roughly like this. I'm just showing a single strand. So if there are two strands, or for your ease of understanding, I first show the artistic view, how our DNA looks. So this is your plus strand or the 5' to 3' strand. This is your opposite strand, 3' to 5' strand. And then you have got these bases over here. Okay. So this is how it is linked. So here if it is ATGC, here it will be GCAT. Okay. Now this pairing is also specific. They don't randomly pair. A always pairs with D. So we show it with a double bond because it is A double bond D, and GC are your triple bonds. So it is G triple bond C. Fine, and they are covalent bonds. Okay, you will be doing this in part of your chemistry, more in details when you do your high school sciences. So ATGC. So they have a definite order, right? When you stand in a line or in a queue, you have an order, right? You don't shuffle unnecessarily unless you are told to do that. Similarly, they are all discipline basis standing one after the other. Now, let us say if there is something and this is misplaced, it is removed. I remove this T from here. What will happen? There will be an empty space over here. This will not code for anything. Or let us say something happens and the entire structure is cut off. So like this TSC over here on the left half, I just cut off this portion, segment. This is gone. What is going to happen? There is going to be no bonding, right? So these bases sitting on the upper or on the upper side are going to have nobody to pair with. So this is a type of change which we term as mutation. Mutations have got various types. There are frame shifts, there are base pair mutations, there are mismatch mutations. Mismatch mutations are what? I told you the matches over here. Don't forget them. It is AT-GC. Now what if A pairs with G? Can't it do that? Yeah, it can. Or A could also pair with C. But that is not biologically sustainable. That doesn't happen. So this becomes a mismatch mutation. Mismatch repair. I mean, in terms of DNA damage, there are various pathways that repair DNA. So this becomes a mismatch mutation, which is uncalled for, right? So then this is one type of mutation. What is the second type? I told you the entire thing goes off. A chunk of the DNA is pulled off or it is cleaved. So this leads to frame shift. Now, why am I calling it frame shift? First, you should understand what is meant by a frame. When there is transcription or conversion of the DNA into your RNA, there is a reading frame, right? When the teacher calls out your name, if I take an attendance tomorrow in the class and then I say there are 60 students, so I will be calling you in the alphabetical order or on the basis on which you took admission. So there is an order to it, right? Similarly, these bases have got an order, and usually the transcription is in triplicates. So three bases together will code for one amino acid ultimately. So first of all, they will be getting converted into RNA, 1:1 conversion. Then the triplet from RNA will be getting converted into a protein, right? So now if this is excised means it is cut off, it is cleaved. So when this happens, there is a frame shift. So when your RNA polymerase comes over here, or your ribosomes come here for translation, they will find a mismatch over here. They will not read this. They will start coding from this end. So it means that this portion is missing. Ultimately, you were say expected to get a protein structure like this. Now, since I removed the first portion, this part is missing. So what I get is just this. So I'm showing it as a dotted area. So this portion is missing, which means this is a non-functional protein. It will not fold, first of all. It will be destined for degradation. And then it can have a number of consequences. So mutation. Ultimately, we are studying mutation. So a mutation can lead to so many things, ultimately affecting your cells at the protein level. And of course, at the genetic level, when it happens, I told you, you get various congenital diseases, syndromes, and whatnot. Fine. If you remember in the news recently, that always, and you are Gen Z, Gen Alpha kids, you must be seeing YouTube ads and whatnot. So usually there are appeals, in the public for treating a baby boy or a baby child who is affected with muscular dystrophy. So that is again a very deadly disease, a genetic disease which could be inherited due to chance events. So in that, what happens is the child cannot stand up after 2-3 years of age. The spinal cord becomes completely dysfunctional. So that is also genetic. When you have changes in your genes, that happens. Okay, and of course there is medication for it. So if I'm not wrong, there is only one US company that sells it. If I'm not wrong, they have monopoly. And the injection costs you in lakhs, or it is 1 or 2 crores, I believe. So you see, they can raise a havoc in your genome if there are mutations. But these changes are somewhere essential, okay, to have variations in your ultimately coded biomolecules, that is proteins. How? Let us see. So evolution. How does evolution occur? Do you think that in one day the zebra turned into a giraffe, or the salamanders turned into snakes suddenly? No. So slowly and steadily things happen, which we term as evolution. So the next obvious question would be that, okay, sir, are we evolving? Of course we are. We are evolving. The thing is, they are so slow that we cannot detect it through the human eye. So evolution is still evident. Based on our needs, you never know. You keep on chatting, you use gadgets so frequently, as if that's an extended organ of your body, that tomorrow you might develop links which are better functional for typing on the screen or using a mouse on the laptop. So evolution is continuous, okay, and it's inevitable. You cannot stop evolution from happening. The best examples of evolution are your cactus plants, desert plants, birds, so many things. So they evolved from reptiles, right? If you see the movie Jurassic Park, like I was a big fan of it when I was a kid. So actually, all these species that you see have evolved to a certain extent from dinosaurs. So initially you had the aquatic forms, then you had the subaquatic forms like tortoises, turtles, who spend some time on land and on water respectively, and ultimately evolving into something like reptiles, apes, and mammals, or the purely terrestrial forms. So evolution is necessary, okay, for us to survive. Now for this survival, you cannot suddenly get wings, right? No, that's not possible. Or you suddenly cannot start crawling, or you not get a tail fin through which you can swim in water. So slowly and steadily, these changes develop. That was what Lamarck gave as a theory, which we'll be coming to in some while of time. So evolution is necessary, and these subtle mutations help an organism to evolve by making changes in the DNA or in the genome precisely. So suddenly you don't see somebody getting wings. So that has begun. Now when you write your board exams, Are you going to immediately write your exams after seeing this video? No, right? You will study for yourself. This is just one chapter of S2. You have got S1, you have chemistry, you've got math, you've got language, whatnot. You've got so many subjects. So it is a gradual process. So mutations are also acquired gradually. If they are lethal, this is important. It is not selective. Lethal means it is difficult for the organism to survive. So if you have a lethal mutation, the organism is not going to survive. That is not selected by nature. But if the mutation is essential and that is helping and aiding you progress and grow, that is a healthy mutation or a desirable part of mutation which leads to evolution. So this was about evolution. Then coming to the other three main topics of this chapter which take up a major chunk, and that is why we are doing all of this exercise, is your theories by Lamarck and Darwin. So Lamarck and Darwin, both of them were contemporaries. Though Lamarck was born earlier, but somehow in our life sciences, the first thing we study, and somebody who is celebrated is Sir Charles Darwin. Okay, because he went on a globe round voyage in his ship MS Beagle, and then he went to so many places in and around America, the Galapagos Islands. He even has got certain species named to his credit. His most famous works include on that of the golden finches, the Galapagos turtles. Okay, so he gave theories of evolution based on the evidences that he saw by naked eye. So he saw these species, the way they evolved, and then he gave theories to it. So continuing the previous point of evolution and then coming to Darwin's theory of evolution. So evolution again can be classified into 5 types. So the first one is morphological, morphology, then you have anatomy, then we have this concept of vestigial organs. The fourth is historical, paleontology, and the fifth one is your embryonic evidence. So more or less all of these were studied by Darwin. And they are pretty simple. They might seem to be big words and statements for you, but don't worry. We'll see how to go about it. As the name suggests, the first evolutionary trait that we see is morphology or morphological evidences. What do we mean by morphological evidences? As I gave you my own example, so I am a human being with 2 hands, 2 legs. Similarly, you have got apes from whom we evolved. So you see on Nat Geo or other wildlife channels, documentaries, you see apes, like large apes, gorillas, orangutans, chimpanzees. They too are similar, right? They too have got 2 limbs. Then they have got toes, they have got 2 eyes, nostrils. A very structured bilateral symmetry. So this is nothing but your morphological evidence. Or let us compare between a sheep, dog, and a cat. All of them are domesticated. Sheep you utilize for milk, wolf, dogs and cats are used as for pets. So their faces have got similarities, right? They all have got nostrils, they all have got 2 eyes, pair of lips, ears, and that's it. And of course, then there will be certain changes in terms of whiskers or the coat color and whatnot. So all of them contribute towards a morphological evidence of evolution. So a cat and dog is different. Cats belong to the Felidae family, which means they evolved from one genus, from one ancestor. Dogs, on the other hand, evolved from wolves. So this is your morphological evidence. Now, when it comes to anatomical evidences, we actually go into the physiology of the organism. So what are anatomical evidences? The famous ones given in a textbook are the patagium of a bat, the fin of a whale, and the hand of a human. So I'll take them only because they're easy to understand, and nonetheless here concept clearing is our intention. So you see I have my limb, this is my left hand, right, and I have got 5 fingers when I stretch out. So this forelimb means my hand, and hind limbs are my legs. But for humans we don't use these terminologies because we walk on 2 feet. But in terms of dogs and cats and other animals, we use the terms forelimb and hind limb. So forelimb is your hand. So when it comes to whales, which are oceanic mammals, they have fins. They don't have legs like us. So if I were to draw, So you see the structural similarities in these three. So this is of a human. So this is my hand, hopefully. This is that of a bat, the patagium of a bat. So bats do not have wings. It is a skin flap extended between their appendages. So they are not true wings in real sense. And this is of a whale. So you see all of them are similar. So they are hands, but they don't function as hands. Right? If you tell a whale to lift up a pen and write on the board, it won't be able to do that. Or a bat, right? And or if you tell me to swim like a whale in the ocean, is it possible? No. Because all of these structures are evolved or they are set to do a specific function. And of course, they arose because of the need for it, which is what was given by Lemma as a theory. So here you see these are your anatomical evidences. Now, when it comes to the third one, which is termed as vestigial organs. So every organism has got certain useless organs or organelles. So what do I mean by saying useless? Are they completely useless? Of course, these days there are theories and there is a lot of research going on that these organs or organs are also essential in some form, but it is still not a widely accepted theory. Obviously, we study it with reference to humans because that is easy. So I told you that we evolved from apes, right? So apes do have got tails. They have got an opposable thumb also on their feet, through which they can cling on branches and support. Can you walk on branches barefoot? No, you need hands, right? You will not be able to stand like this unless it is a 90-degree stable branch over there. Similarly, your vestigial organs in humans are the third eyelid in the eye, the muscles of your external pinna or the ear. Then your tailbone. So tailbone is what you can feel. If you just touch behind your waist region, the place where your spinal cord approximately ends in your pelvic region, you have your tailbone. So the evidence is still there, but you do not have a tail. You do not have the appendages, or sorry, the vertebrae which extend up till the tail. But if you see organisms like sheep, dog, cow, cat, so many of them are domesticated. They all have a tail, and that is still functional, right? Which they use for a lot of things. So this is the concept of vestigial organs. So as we evolve, the uses for these organs or organelles reduced with time. So they were no longer necessary. Now when we started walking on feet, we learned balancing on 2 feet. So we do not need any tail or external accessories to support it. We don't run like a cheetah to hunt, right? Have you seen any humans go hunt running? No. Except, barring the exception of certain tribes which still do that. But we can fairly run well on our 2 feet and limbs, which are strong enough. So the tail went missing in humans. Similarly, the third eyelid. We don't swim like fishes, right? So we don't need an extra eyelid. The single eyelid that drops in the XY zone, like top and bottom, is essential. Is more than enough. But when you see organisms like crocodiles or certain fishes, they have got two or three eyelids. So the first one is a transparent eyelid. So it shuns them or protects them from the aquatic environment or the aqueous environment of water, but they can still see. Now, if I close my eye, I will not be able to see anything because that is just one opaque lid that I have over here. So, but the transparent thing that was there has gone because we don't no longer swim. We don't need it. Similarly, was the thing for the others. Like we cannot move our ears. You see cows, how beautifully they move if you call out by the name, or your dogs, for instance. They very beautifully turn their ears, their external pinna. So the mobility muscles are still functional in them. For humans, we lost it because we don't need it. We don't stay in the wild, we don't hunt. We stay in shelters, we stay in man-made homes, like this is a room, I stay over here. You also stay in your respective homes. Do we stay in the forest any longer? No. Even if there are tribes, they do settle and live in hutments. They don't live in the open. So certain organs had diminished activity because of which they degressed. So they were lost in the period of evolution. So losing something is also good, okay, in this way. Not all losses are bad. So this is a very good example for you people that to achieve something, you got to lose something. So similarly, these vestigial organs are still evolving and hopefully they will reduce or be absent in a few more thousand generations to say. One more organ is your appendix in your viscera, right? So that is also vestigial. But again, especially for appendix, there are a few research papers which states non-canonical roles, which might be proponents of the theory that it might be required to certain extent for some functions which are not very well known. So then the first point is paleontology. So paleontology, as the name suggests, is something to do with history, archaeology. So paleontological evidences of evolution are these, as I told you, from dinosaurs or aquatic forms of dinosaurs, the way we evolved. So in paleontology, we always have these three major phases, that is Cenozoic, Mesozoic, and Paleozoic. So the Cenozoic era is the most recent one. Recent as in it is few lakh years, but still as compared to the other two, it is recent. Then you have the Mesozoic era, or the Mesozoic zone as we call it. And the ultimate is Paleozoic. So these are all zones, okay. If I dig up earth, if I not in this place, not in plateaus you do that, but at excavation sites or at regions near the shores of oceans or certain rivers which have dried up or are drying up, you will primarily the land mass when you dig below is divided into these three zones, which is what? Your Cenozoic, your Mesozoic, and your Paleozoic zone. So your Cenozoic, I told you, is the most recent one. So what are the most recent organisms that vanished the Earth or we made them extinct? Oh no, let's be about the ones we made extinct because we killed them. So there are hardly any chances for them to become frozen in terms of time. So they are usually your certain birds, animals, or mammal species that evolved over the years, but they were lost. Okay, so they were selected and they were eliminated from the ecology. So that is your Cenozoic era. So in this, you have certain birds, apes. Recently, there was a paper which stated that kangaroos, right? Australia is famous for marsupials. So there was a much larger species of kangaroo which was existing, and the fossils of which have just been unearthed. So they are from the Cenozoic era or the Mesozoic era because you still see their progeny or their relatives in today's world. Kangaroos aren't extinct, right? They're endemic to Australia, but they're there. And of course, you can see them in a few parks as well when you go to foreign lands. So that is about your Cenozoic and Mesozoic era. But the Paleozoic era is the most oldest or the most primitive kind of life forms that you had. So when you talk about Pangaea land, wherein the landmass was one, it was all ocean and just one blob of landmass, like an island, which we called as Pangaea. Then they split into two, Gondwana land, this and that. So something pertaining to that era is, so just understand, I'm trying to emphasize that it is, when I say old, it is really, really old. A few million years old, okay? Not like 100,000 years old. So in this you have got the aquatic forms because life evolved in water, right? So starfishes, shelled organisms, mollusks. Okay, the first ones to develop as organisms are found in the Paleozoic era. So here you will find something like your starfishes, your conches, or any organisms that bear a shell. Okay, and certain fishes, of course, because they were also there. And then as you come up, you come towards the surface, you find recent forms. So that is how it is summed up. Then, so this was all about evolution. Then coming to, I hope you have made a note of this. Then coming to theories of Darwin. So the most revered topic, as I told you, and celebrated as well. So I told you that Darwin was out on a voyage and then he made certain observations which have been famously published in his book. So Darwin said that organisms evolve over the period of time based on these 5 major things. Like in your syllabus, evolution is made evident or can be tested using these 5 major things, right? So he proposed these theories that organisms evolve over a period of time based on adaptation and there is survival of the fittest. So this was his major landmark, okay, in the theory of evolution that he made. What? That is survival of the fittest. So now, in layman terms, survival of the fittest means what? Do I need to go to the gym? Do I need to be a hunk? to be fit? No, it doesn't exactly mean in terms of physiological evidences or physiological well-being, though that is not an excluded part, that is there of course. But your survival of the fittest means for the niche you stay in, for the ecological niche. How good you are at coping with the environment, the harsh conditions, the availability of food, the surrounding enemies, the propensities to mate, finding a mate, because that is the ultimate goal. Like the organism will always pass on its progeny. It will have to breed and grow and give birth to offspring. So that was Darwin's theory, survival of the fittest. So when I say fittest, let us consider two niches. Okay, so one is your say desert, and the other is your rainforest. Two contrasting ideas, better to understand. So, what kind of life forms do you expect in the desert? What kind of plants? Majorly cacti. So, cacti, that is, and certain grasses, thorny shrubs, are all a part of the desert triad. When it comes to rainforest, you have everything over there, right from lichens to fungi, shrubs, herbs, small trees, large trees, canopy trees, whatnot. So the density as well as the variety in terms of quality, the types of species, and in terms of number, like if I say if I'm standing over here, okay, right. So I'm in the middle of the board. Now, how many more people could you accommodate in these board lengths? Imagine if so many teachers come and teach you, how will it look? So this is your density. So your per square kilometer, or sorry, per square meter density is what governs the biodiversity or the quantitative aspect of your biology. So in rainforest, you will have all the species of trees like large trees, small trees, shrubs, right? Mosses, lichens. So there is so much of competition. Do you see that? There are so many species, there are so many individuals of the species. Now, when we talk in terms of competition or survival of the fittest, it essentially does not only mean that I fight with a ape to eat the mangoes on the tree, or I fight with a orangutan to help me eat certain tubers, ground tubers. It is interspecific and it is intraspecific. So, interspecific is between two species which are similar, which actually compete for the same food source. So if imagine you were left, okay, in a small village with no aid, with no climbing aids, and there is just one mango tree which happens to be a food source. And then there is a school of monkeys over there, or a group of monkeys, sorry. So you would compete with them, right? Though initially you would fear them that they might hit us or we might end up in a fight, but when your survival mode is on, you will obviously go and venture out, do some adventures. So this is what is termed as interspecific competition. And intraspecific competition is if along with you I leave your friend over there, then who will win? You will want to have the maximum number of mangoes and even he or she. So this becomes your intraspecific competition. So both of these act as driving forces for your Darwinian theory of survival of the fittest. So have you followed? So majorly this is interspecific and intraspecific also in terms of species I'm talking. So all of these led to this conceptualization of this theory which was given by Darwin, that there is survival of the fittest. But now there are certain limitations to the theory. What are they? Let us see. So what are the limitations of the Darwinian theory? The first one is that evolution is not the sole cause. The next is it doesn't explain the usefulness or the dysfunction or the uselessness of a given modification. And the third one is the evolutionary changes that occur in an organism, how fast or slow are they? And if they are slow or fast, what is the reason? It does not explain that. So there are no reasons Abrupt means fast or sudden changes. Abrupt or slow changes. Now, these are slightly philosophical concepts, class. Don't just jump upon them to understand. To earn and score marks in a paper, understand them slightly. Because for everything, there are evidences, but they might not be having solid proofs. Let me explain with the final reason or the limitation for it. So that I have stated that there are no reasons given by Darwin for the abrupt or slow changes. Now, how slow is slow and how fast is fast? Isn't that an interesting question? So now, if I walk from here to that end in 1 second, so I just have to stroll 1 feet over there. That is how fast I am. And if I walk very slow like this, okay. So this is slow. So now this is in the time frame of a few seconds of this lecture that you might be able to time. But here we are scaling it in years. Years, mind well, not a decade, not a century. It's 1 century or one era or one epoch, millions of years of time, right? So certain changes occur very fast and certain occur very slow. The best example for abrupt change is no, that is not a good example to give. So abrupt changes means whenever a change is sudden in terms of time. Now nobody clocked them. So for all the species that you see around, you cannot say what evolved when unless you see certain zoology or archaeological papers. That too putatively you can comment whether these changes occurred suddenly or they occurred gradually and eventually. So Darwin's theory does not give reasons why certain things go fast and why certain things go slow. Of course, changes are necessary. Evolution is necessary. It is happening. But how fast or slow it should be, who governs that? So this was something which was a lacunae in his theory. Then coming to the second one, it does not explain the usefulness or the non-use of a given modification. Now what do I mean by this? So he just made speculations or observations. So the giraffe has got a long neck. The Galapagos turtles live for 150 to 200 years. They are like 200 tons of mass. They're very huge, actually huge. So, and they live also long. But why do they live so long? Why not other species of turtles also survive that length of a lifetime? So, and the shells that evolved. They could have a crab-like carapace as well. They wanted protection, right? And they're so huge. They hardly have predators. Most of them are terrestrial forms. They are terrestrial. They only go to the aquatic bodies to cool themselves and shower and have some food or whatever. So majority of the time they spend on the territory. So then coming to abrupt changes, if they evolved a lifestyle which was more terrestrial than aquatic, what are the reasons for it? This is something which he did not state. Then coming to the longevity of these turtles, Galapagos turtles. Why do they live so long? What is the use? Are they of any benefit to other species? Is the mother earth blessed because they are surviving? Something of that sort. So these were slow changes. Then their carapace, which is like with this thing, almost like around 2-3 inches. Then why do they need to have such a hard and huge carapace? So this is something which he could not explain. He made speculation. Even in golden finches, they are songbirds, they are singing birds. But how do they evolve and develop those songs? Why are they learned by their offsprings? So these things to entirety he could not explain with his theories, or one cannot explain with his theories. Then coming to the first one is, you might find this contradictory, but it is true. Evolution is not the sole cause of your theory of evolution. Like the evidences that we saw, like 5 causes of evolution. So all those 5 causes are affecting and they will lead to evolution, but they are not the only things. Then you would ask me, sir, then what else is remaining? What is missing? So apart from that, you remember the central dogma? In the evidence-based evolution theory, nowhere have we considered the genome, apart from the mutation aspect. So things likewise and so forth form a part of the other causes. Then there are certain epigenetic causes. Now this is a very common term for you. So epigenetic changes are also leading to evolution. Epigenetic changes means they are not hereditary. They will not be passed on. Now if I stay over here for instance, for 10 more years, 20 more years, making such videos for you people out there. So I've been evolved in a certain way, the way I have my throw of voice, the way I carry myself, the way I dress, whatever. So this is a part of the epigenetic changes. But my offsprings might not have it. They might not be tutors as well, right? So evolution is not the sole cause, and this Darwin's theory cannot explain. So then we look up to Lamarck. So Lamarck was his contemporary, though he was older than Darwin. So this theory is more appropriate. Of course, this has also got limitations. But Lamarckism, essentially, if I put it in one word, is your need-based evolution. What do I mean by need-based evolution? Now, if I need to write on the board, for instance, I cannot be a crawling organism, right? I should stand on my feet, which I am. So I am evolved to do that. I am evolved to talk to you in English, to explain you science to this first chapter from PNYC. So this is a need-based thing. Please don't get confused with evolution. I'm just quoting an example. So the best example of Lamarck's theory can be given by the extension or the very long neck that giraffes have. Okay, this is a very classical example that is always given. So giraffes started grazing. They are relatives of the zebra, okay, from the horse family. So they started munching on leaves which were higher, higher, and higher, and eventually they grow up to such staggering heights, normally 10, 20 feet tall. Not 20 feet, around 10, 12 feet if I'm not wrong. Yeah. So their necks evolved based on the need because they wanted to reach the top branches, the apical branches, the canopy, which other species did not do. Now, why did they do this? You remember somewhere at some point of time I had told you about interspecific competition. So this was evolved and a positive effect of interspecific competition. You had zebras, you had buffaloes, you have so many gazelles, you have deers. All of them are the similar height, right? They have a range. So if they graze on the land, if they graze the grassland, shrubs, then you will be wiped off, right? And herbivores are always large in number. If you remember the life triangle, auxotrophes are always higher, followed by herbivores and then the carnivores or the apical or the terminal apex predators as we call them. So they evolved. Now all of them evolved. Is it like one or two giraffe species evolved? Individuals? No. The organism evolved to such an extent that it became a different species, which we now in today's world call them giraffes. Do you call a giraffe, some kind of giraffe a zebra? No. A zebra is a striped animal, right? You know it. So giraffe, evolution of this neck of a giraffe can be explained by Lamarckian theory of evolution, which states it is need-based. Desert plants, why do they have thorns? Because they want to prevent the evaporation that is caused due to the high temperature and the arid climate. So their leaves evolved into thorns. They lost their vegetative part and they became thorns. So thorns are modified leaves. Though on certain accounts, certain plants that we see, as you must have them at your home or you see them on the road dividers, all of them essentially are not a part of the cacti family. Some of them are in the sub-arid zone. So like you have got deserts, but deserts suddenly don't start. Like you have a desert-like area, a barren land. So there are some plants which remain in the buffer zone or the buffer area. They too have got thorns, but not as prominent as the cacti. So these two examples, if you remember, neck of the giraffe and a modification of leaves into thorns, this will help you explain the Lamarckian theory of evolution or Lamarckism as it is classically called. Then coming to our most last and important part of our chapter is speciation and human evolution. So speciation concept is, of course, evolution of a species. It will seem like a bit of iteration, but as I had just explained, let us presume that giraffes evolved from zebras or some form of horses, the horse family. So speciation is what? Again the same. So you had an ancestor just as humans had apes, and then you evolved from them. So in your textbook, if you see, there is a beautiful illustration shown in your SSC textbooks how we evolved from lemurs. There are like around 7 to 8 human forms that are shown. Why am I calling them human forms? Because they are humans, but the earlier ones are not humans. They were lemurs, then you had the Egyptian version of it, then you have all, until the recent times, we had what? These ape-like features. a lot of body hair, a stub nose, strong limbs, bare hands. But eventually, all of which are reducing. Do you see humans having so much of body hair? Like, leave apart the genetics. Some of them are hairy, some of them are not. But that is a part of genetics because probably their parents, which comes from the Y aspect of chromosome, so they will have little bit more body hair as compared to others, and some of them you see they will be completely hairless or very less sparsely hair. So that is a part of their heredity. But otherwise, tell me if you have seen a human who looks like a chimpanzee with all the body hair, right from your cheeks to your toe tips. Nobody, right? So we have evolved. This is what you call as evolution. So humans have evolved from small ape species like say lemurs to apes, chimpanzees, and that is why a large proportion of our DNA or the genome bears similarity with such apes. So when you talk in terms of chimpanzees or gorillas for that matter, literally we have got a genome. Genome means over here whenever I say genome, it means the DNA. Okay, get it clear. So 98% similarity. Imagine class. We are 98% similar to gorillas. The 2% difference makes me stand here and them in the forest. Right? So that is the wonder of evolution. So less and subtle changes make up to great differences. And all of them have evolved. So the current species, like if I was to classify myself according to the binomial nomenclature, it is what? It is Homo sapiens sapiens. So you have got the species and the subspecies. So both of them are sapiens, the most advanced form that we have. 100 million years down the line, there will be a different species. We will be outdated probably. Alright, go. So that is what accounts for evolution. Initially, before this, the most recent we had was the Neanderthal man, which was very human-like, a human-like man form or an ape-like man form. They too had body hair, but these ape-like features had started reducing. Now, what do I mean by ape-like features? Loss of a tail. We have lost the tails, so they lost tails. Body hair reduced. The external pinnas became smaller because we did not hear the dangers. We don't stay in a forest. Our noses were not stubbed like they had. We evolved noses in a different way. So all of these factors contributed towards humans be becoming Homo sapiens. Fine. Have you followed? Well done. So these are your 6 major things we studied in this first chapter. I hope by now your concepts about Darwinism and Lamarckism are clear. And please get things right. Don't mix the two. As I gave in one line, your Lamarckian theory is your need-based evolution. Darwinism concept is your survival of the fittest. And what are the limitations of the Darwin theory are enlisted on the board. And human evolution is again a very favorite topic, how humans evolved from apes and lemurs as the putative ancestor that is given in your textbooks. So this is also an important concept. So I hope with this you must have enjoyed learning the first chapter of biology. See you for the next time. Bye bye.